Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today's actually going to be a follow-up video for a video I originally recorded after Thanksgiving. It's going to be in regards to the baseball that I acquired right around that time. That had the autographs of several players from the New York Yankees. At that time, I kind of estimated what year it potentially was signed. Well, I have an update. I can tell you exactly what year it was going to be signed, but I just want to do kind of a recap real quick. So let me go ahead and share the screen here. View. All right, pull this up here and I'm going to pull it on the screen. All right, so here's the baseball that I was able to acquire from a coworker. At that time, again, we didn't know how it was acquired and if the autographs were real, but it had some interesting players that were on it, players that played with the Yankees in the late 60s. Mel Stottlemyre, Steve Hamilton, Bobby Cox. It would have probably been a very early career Bobby Cox. Whitey Ford was also signed on there with a different pen, but most importantly, the Mickey Mantle was on there. So let me stop sharing here. So that's the ball. I have it over here too in hand as well. But I finally got the letter back from JSA. At that time, I just saw that it was authentic. I didn't get a chance to see what they were going to be putting in the letter. Didn't get that until just a couple weeks ago. And I meant to do a video earlier than that, but I kind of forgotten until I was driving home tonight. And I was like, well, let me do that. That's a real quick, fun one. So again, just real quickly, recap on the ball. We can show you real quickly to get out of the case. I'm going to be buying a better case for this in the coming weeks. So as I start kind of working on the display room here, so here's the Mantle signature on there. It's kind of the big one on kind of the sweet spot on the ball. So you can see Mickey on there. We have Whitey Ford by himself on another side. And then three players are kind of together. You got Mel Stottlemyre, Steve Hamilton, and then Bobby Cox, obviously, who played for the Yankees for a couple of years before he became a Hall of Fame manager over several clubs, but specifically with the Braves and with the Blue Jays. So at that time, I estimated probably it was signed in 1968, just because I was trying to figure out when those types of players would have been available together to be able to sign. It looks like at least four of the signatures were signed at the same time with the same pen. And I thought it would be like an unusual to probably have that grouping of players at some point after Mantle's playing career. So I kind of estimated that would be 1968. It actually is a league ball from that time. It is a ball that is actually a Joe Cronin ball, who was the commissioner of baseball at that time, which is also kind of another key thing to kind of look at. Well, the letter came back, and at the time I didn't know that they would actually kind of estimate what year it was signed in. But it came back, and it has all signatures were authentic. So we have Mickey Mantle, Bobby Cox, Whitey Ford are the Hall of Famers that are listed on there. And we obviously have Mel Stottlemyre, who I remember more as the father of two pitchers in Major League Baseball, Todd and Mel Jr., but also the pitching coach for the New York Yankees during the late 90s when they won 4 World Series in 5 seasons. I remember him very distinctly then, kind of working along with Joe Torre, kind of being able to the pitching coaching and pitching changes and stuff like that, and also Don Zimmer on the bench. Those three were just kind of synonymous with those teams in the same way some of the stars were as well, in my memory, thinking back to those teams in the late 90s. And then Steve Hamilton, who was a pitcher for them during most of the 60s, actually. But yeah, it was signed in 1968. That's what it says on the top there. So that would have been Mickey Mantle's last playing season. I think it might have also been Bobby Cox's rookie season. So this potentially is a rookie Bobby Cox signature. So I can't imagine there's too many balls out there that have a rookie Bobby Cox signature along with the last season of Mickey Mantle. There might be some team balls that were signed during that time that they've been able to find. But that's just such a cool item. I think having all those different signatures on there, it just makes it really interesting for me as a baseball fan and a collector secondarily. So happy to have this. It was one of my favorite pickups from last year. Again, going to get a better case for this. Until then, it's going to stay in a box, securely in a box, until I have a chance to display it more securely on my new storage unit over here that should be getting ready soon. Just a brief update on this. I'll be kind of working to paint the walls over the course of the next couple weeks, and we're going to be possibly replacing some of the furniture that's in here to create some more storage and more space to be able to kind of display some cards with hopefully some display cases. So that's it. That was kind of the major update I wanted to share with you. But before I go, this is going to be the night before opening day, which normally is a very exciting time in the baseball world. It's a kind of the time where everybody has the same record. Everybody has a chance, right? And that's what you kind of like get excited about. Well, going into this season, I am not very excited. I have a lot of grievances with the White Sox right now, and they're my team, so I do give them a little bit of grace in a lot of different ways. But right now, I'm having a hard time being able to buy into this rebuild for a couple different reasons. One, during the course of the last season, when they decided to just kind of tank it. And the previous season, where they decided to just tank it too. So going on this the third year now where they just are tanking it. They tried to sell us on the possibilities of like having all these young players that they're going to be acquiring and drafting in their organizations, kind of being the next great wave of great players. But I have a big objection with that because we just went through that. We just went through that and it didn't work. It doesn't always work having all these great players in your minor league system and then bringing them up and having them all work out real well together. We had 2 years where we were in the playoffs. One of them was the COVID season, and the other one was subsequent to that in 21, where we made the playoffs, but we weren't competitive when it came down to playing the Houston Astros. And that quickly was the thinking kind of went to, well, we need to start kind of like tearing this team apart when they started struggling after the start of the 2023 season, when they hit 500 during the course of the previous season in 2022. The argument is that this offseason, they offloaded Garrett Crochet, and they offloaded a lot of players during the season last year, and they're trying to be able to find a suitor for Luis Robert. If he's off to a great start, he'll be gone in a couple months for sure. And my whole problem with this thing is it doesn't have to be this way, and they're taking the good grace of the fans and the fandom for taking advantage of it. And it's a very thin line between like being a diehard fan and being turned off to this team forever. I'm not on that side of it yet, but I do fear like a lot of people are kind of getting that way. The last time I kind of like felt that animosity towards the White Sox was actually right around the strike of 1994, and it wasn't just the White Sox, but it had a lot to do with Jerry Reinsdorf involvement with the strike at that time. And a lot of fans got really upset with owners and players, but like Reinsdorf being one of the more vocal ones, got a lot of attention here locally and nationally, actually, as the representative kind of like of the owners and sort of the ways that they were kind of trying to hardball the players into, whatever terms they wanted to set, and weren't really negotiating well with them. But, the players also were pretty fickle too during that time frame. We all kind of suffered. But this one in particular, the reason I think people are having a hard time with it now, and I'm having a hard time with it right now, is again, it doesn't need to be this way. They cry poor, and I'm sure their finances are a little tighter than some other teams, but if they're that tight, it's time to sell the team, because there are ways of trying to be able to build a team on a cheap and hope that they can sign these players when they're young for multiple year contracts in the ways that like maybe the Braves have done. That's unique. A lot of these players are going to want to hit free agency if they're playing pretty well and look and see what other opportunities are out there. They have no ties to Chicago in some ways. They haven't really developed a culture where people want to be able to come play for the White Sox or play in Chicago. And that's a problem. So they argue that these players are going to go to free agency once their contracts are up. So let's just kind of move them on when we can get like max prospects in return and draft picks, or whatever they're trying to going after. You can't get draft picks actually, but max prospects in return, and maybe some young star players that are already at the major league level. They don't have to. What's stopping them from like saying, okay, we're going to have to overpay, to be able to keep some of these players. We have to overpay to keep Garrett Crochet as one of our top line starters. And then you know what? We got one of our 5 rotation positions set for a long time, barring injury, right? They didn't have to do that. And, that's my biggest thing is they're kind of saying that there's no way that we're going to be able to kind of retain these players and they won't be part of the team when they come back. That's only because of the limitation of their own vision in many ways. And they can open up those checkbooks and start kind of writing bigger checks to be able to get these players. And yes, they're going to have to overpay. That's just the way it is. You're going to have to overpay to get players over New York or Los Angeles. And the Reinsdorf has historically never wanted to do that, and he's been very critical of players when they walked away from his money when he felt like he was really stretching it. I think that very clearly back when Manny Machado decided to go to the Padres, and he kind of leveraged the offer from the White Sox to be able to get a more accommodating offer from the Padres. And that doesn't go over well with the players. Like, they're free to choose wherever they want to go. And the White Sox made a good faith effort then in trying signing him, but they're still free to go where they want. Just because they have made this awesome offer, and I think they even offered him a little bit more money than San Diego did, doesn't mean he's gonna take it. But you also don't have to publicly kind of chastise the player for just kind of exercising their own will to go wherever they want. And that turns people off. And this is an owner that's turned people off ever since the Bulls were broken up in the late 90s. And I know he's a big fan. His fandom goes kind of unquestioned when it kind of comes to baseball, but the way he's kind of running this organization, and maybe it's because he's obviously answering to all the other owners. They want to make sure they make money, that maybe they are a little bit tight and they kind of run a very thin margin, and they take advantage of revenue sharing. But my God, they don't put a product on the field that's going to be competing. And this is now the second straight season, probably the third in earnest, where you're just you're not even trying. You're not even trying with the players that you have out there. And I'm not trying to say anything negative about the people that are out there, both the journeyman players that are out there and these young players coming up. And maybe these young players will be part of a team that's really good in a couple of years. But you're not surrounding them with anybody that's going to be able to help them compete right now. And that is my biggest problem with them right now, is they just think that, okay, the fans will be okay if we're talking about the Birmingham Barons and all these great players that are coming up through Winston-Salem and otherwise, that are going to be these great players in a few years, and they're going to get excited about that, while at the same time still coming to the ballpark and watching this team not compete. And they're wrong. And with that said, I have bought some tickets this year. But I'm not necessarily. I'm excited to go see a game, but I'm not excited to see the White Sox, if that makes sense. I was excited to see the White Sox when I felt like they were really trying, and there was investment in keeping their players, and the players were good. I wanted to see them win, and they were competing. It was still fun going to the game on top of that too, but it was fun winning. And last year, I went to several games, and they weren't even competitive and trying to be able to win those games. And the game I saw them win was when they were trying to avoid to break the record in their last home game, which they did, and then they ended up breaking the record the very next day. And yeah, so that's my kind of first big gripe with the team, and it's kind of similar to my gripe last season. Jerry is not positioning that team to be able to win. They're always trying to kind of do it on the cheap when these players are inexpensive coming up through the farm system, which you need that balance too. But where is your big free agency signings? Are you just going to wait till the team looks like they might be able to compete to try and go after these players? What's going to make a free agent who's going to want to sign a 10-year deal think that, okay, the moment we start not doing well, are you going to try and start investing in this team, or are you going to start trying to offload players again? I need some stability. I need some predictability. I want to be able to compete year after year, and you're just not it. So that's a big problem I have with it. And then the final thing is they're not making it easy to watch the team right now. They lost the local kind of cable networks this last year when NBC Sports decided to discontinue their local cable channel here. And the big teams they were kind of covering at that time were the Bulls, the Blackhawks, and the Chicago White Sox were the major teams that were on that channel. And those three teams decided to kind of launch their own sort of network, if you will. And they're having a hard time getting distribution of it. They have it free on antenna, but that's kind of a crappy signal all the way out here because it's being broadcast downtown. And it's on just a few cable networks, if I'm not mistaken, but it's not on all of them that are available in this area. So I can't get it. I can't get it in some other people that are out here that are outside of the area of RCN cable, which is in the city predominantly. They can't get the games unless they're wanting to deal with their antennas on their TVs. And honestly, who's had antennas on their TVs in the last 15 years? when they moved to HD antennas, yeah, sometimes you get the signal, but like more often than not, I was having to screw around with the antenna for so often to try and get the signal. And eventually we just got the cable feed. Now we're streaming things, but even like the streaming services are not carrying this channel, at least the ones that we subscribe to. And I don't necessarily want to have to pay another like $30, $40 a month to be able to kind of get another streaming service that actually has them on there. So they're not making it easy for people to even easily access the team right now. And this channel is kind of a disaster so far because like the Bulls aren't very good. Yeah, they'll probably be in a playoff game, play-in game for the playoff spots, just by the grace of God, because everyone beneath them is even worse. And the Blackhawks are a work in progress right now too. Maybe they'll be good in a couple more years. I hope that they are. But like, who's going to bend over backwards to kind of trying to cater them to kind of come on their network? They're gonna these other are cable companies like like we want you to come on, but we're not going to pay the price that you're wanting to be able to do this because we're not going to have enough viewership because your teams are bad. Um, that's a real problem, and so they just feel like they're making like a lot of organizational blunders, one right after another. And I do think like people that are kind of running the farm system right now are probably have a good idea of what they're doing. And in a couple more years, yeah, they probably will be kind of competitive for sure. But right now, it's just painful. And they're not really kind of setting a stage where people are going to be like, I want to go play for the White Sox when they need to start signing these big free agents. I could do a whole other thing about the Cubs. I'm not the most adamant Cub fan. I think people kind of know that about me, but that's another organization that I could also do another rant on, and has nothing to do with Cubs fandom or their history or anything like that. It's the way they're being currently managed. And there's no reason to kind of, in short, for them not to be competing for these big free agents too. They have the resources within their organization to be able to kind of pull it off if they wanted to. But, like they quickly fell out of the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes. They quickly fell out of the Juan Soto sweepstakes. It's Chicago. It should be as competitive a market as New York and Los Angeles. And they're trying to run it like it's St. Louis. And nothing against the Cardinals, but they have bigger revenues here. And they're just not leveraging these things to the best of their abilities. And that goes for both owners at sides of the town here, north and south. So anyway, I went on way too long with this. I did the Mantle ball for about 5 minutes. I've ranted about the White Sox for about 12 minutes. I hope they prove me wrong and have a winning record in April, and maybe they'll play close to 500. But listening to all the preseason predictions from the podcasts that I listen to that are baseball related, they're all asking like, well, are they going to win or lose just as many games as they did last year? Or are they still bound to lose at least 100 games again for the third straight year in a row? There's no talk about them like maybe being a surprise team to get close to 500. They haven't earned it. If they do it, it's going to come out of the blue. But anyway, for those of you who have teams that are trying to compete, have a great opening day. I'll be watching a lot of those games too because there's a lot of those players are exciting. And like I said, I can't watch the White Sox right now. And I don't think they're going to be on national television anytime soon unless something really crazy happens. All right. Well, have a great rest of your evening. Happy opening day for everybody. And we'll be back soon.